but there were two people I just could not locate for the longest time, and that was Rob Stein,
Who plays
as well as Rob Stein and Peter Cowper. And the long story short, the best way I could find out is I knew that we were supposed to be getting residuals for My Bloody Valentine, and I had asked Tom if he ever received any. He says no, and I said, well, you know, you really should check out with the union. And sure enough, they had some money waiting for him. And I thought, wait a minute, if they've got money for him, there's got to be money for Peter and Rob. So I called the Toronto office, and they said, no, I don't think they were hired out of Toronto, that they were hired out of Montreal. So long story short, I get contacted by a Montreal union rep who says, well, I not only know Rob and Peter, I used to go to acting school with them.
It has been 28 years.
Yes, it had been 28 years. So I found out that in a couple days that Peter, do you mind if I say this, Peter?
Not at all.
Okay, was now a massage therapist in Boulder, Colorado, and he goes by the name of Liam Blackwood. And here's his phone number. And Rob Stein is now Sam Roberts, and he works with the Ted Turner Network, I believe, as a producer, and he is the voice.
He's the voice. He's not as a producer.
Okay, I thought he was. But he is the voice of the Ted Turner Network. So when you hear this, that's our Rob Stein doing that. And so anyway, here we are today, and that's how this all was able to happen again too. So I just wanted to give you a little back history, maybe some more questions you might want to raise.
I don't want to put a sour note on that, but I mean, you are now stalking my 15-year-old daughter because of this Facebook connection. I'm not sure I'm entirely comfortable with that.
That's only because Jim wouldn't answer his Facebook messages or his telephone.
I didn't know it was you.
Those actors, oh, they just...
We have a question right here.
I actually don't have a question. I just wanted to, on behalf of all the ladies here who've seen My Bloody Valentine, thank you guys for the shower scene.
Do you know the story behind the shower scene?
We were reminiscing about the shower scene today, and yes, we were all in the buff. We were all a lot younger, so.
Yes.
And there was hot water for 2 takes. And we did 6, so you can use your imagination.
Yeah. It was funny because, you know, I always remember, I mean, here we were, all these guys walking around in the buff, and the women were around wearing goose-down jackets with little grins on their face. And I know what the temperature is in there. But the only one who wasn't affected was Tom Kovacs.
Hot-blooded man.
And Rob said, Rob, I wish you were here. I remember how many takes, because the water, we ran out of hot water and we didn't have any more warm air. And you'll remember the scene where Rob is in the shower and he said, it's gonna be a hot time Saturday night. And it would go something along the lines of, okay, and action, Rob. It's gonna be a hot take 2. It's gonna be a hot fight. Finally got hot time Saturday night. Cut, we got it. It was so exciting. And when I saw, oh God, I stood on the backside because I didn't have to be in the shower at the time. But when it was my turn, I made sure that all I did was I stuck my water in my arm in the shower and just washed my arm. I'm gonna be an actor. I'll just act like I'm in the shower.
I remember that.
Between takes, all I had to cover myself was the clapboard. So I remember standing in the shower in the background with this little board. But I never went.
Okay, who else has a question? In the back there?
What was it like to work with the great late Keith Knight?
Well, I'll start this. Keith was a lovely, lovely guy. He was just a real genuine fellow, really just a pleasure to work with, and for all of the cast. He was the one guy who impressed me as an actor. I mean, I was just starting out, and he just seemed to have it, you know. Even looking at the film now, he's the guy he's the performance that really just is, there's not an offbeat moment at all. It's just all genuine. And I worked with Keith too. I direct animation right now, so I worked with him a couple of years ago on a project I was doing, and I met him on the street in Toronto. We live in the same town. How you doing? Oh, fine. And you know, it's been a while. How you doing? Oh, you know, work's work. I'm getting a bit of work, this, that, and the other. And 2 months later, I heard he was gone. I found out on working one day, somebody just, an editor I was working with brought up the movie on, you know, we were waiting for something to happen, sitting in an editing suite, and something popped up, said, Keith Knight is dead. You know, it was, he died far too young. He was 50, I think. Brain cancer is very, very sad. It's a great loss to the creative community back where we come from. Over to you guys.
Well, you know, I spent a lot of time with Keith after My Bloody Valentine. We jumped around a bit, and we went to the opening night of My Bloody Valentine in my hometown of North Bay, Ontario. And after doing My Bloody Valentine, he did more film work, but he got very, very involved, as you know, with animation. And he could do Shakespeare. He'd go to the Shaw Festival, and he was an actor. And I think we all learned something just by being in his presence and observing the art of the discipline of being an actor, and in the performance area, and just showing up on time when you're supposed to be somewhere at a certain time. And he was a great morale booster as well. Thank you.
I was so happy that they reinstated his whole scene in the movie, because initially they were only going to have one nail go through his head. And he says, well, I'm a big guy. It's going to take 2 nails to take me down. And I was like, hey, I get to kill him twice, okay. And so it was nice to just shoot that scene and just let him go with it. And like you were saying, Neil, his timing is impeccable. The way he walked out of that machine room and down into the mine, it was just perfect. One take.
When I did My Bloody Valentine, I was extremely new to the movie business. I'd only done, 2 films before that, and so I was far less experienced than Keith Knight. But even with my little experience, I recognized that there was something special about him. He had such a love for life and a great sense of humor. I just loved being around him and absorbed that joyousness that he had on every scene.
He was.
Yeah, I had the great pleasure of not only working with Keith, but a lot of us were working in Montreal, and a lot of us were from Toronto, and I moved to Toronto at Alf's request and stayed with him as long as I could handle it, and then the short story is that I ended up living for some time with both Neil and finally with Keith. Right at the time that he was seeing his wife and planning on getting married. But what we always noticed about Keith was the warmth that was in Keith always came through in the way that he performed, because he was just a lovely human being. Reminded me very much of the same type of quality you see in John Candy, also, who left us too young. They're both great actors and great people.
And yes, he was. As well as being Keith being someone who could keep up the spirits while we were going through some pretty darn tough times filming My Bloody Valentine under the conditions that we were in. There were one of the, I'll just get right out to it, the women of My Bloody Valentine were so hot. And Helene with us and Laurie, and just being in their presence, it was wonderful. If we had to work all night, it was always nice to engage with Laurie and Helene, whether it was over a cup of coffee or just sitting around talking. And they were real morale boosters, whether they knew it or not. So we still talk about them today.
Yeah. How receptive was the town and the actual miners to you guys coming to film it? Like, were they resentful of having to show you, you know, how to walk and do things in the mind, or were they happy to, you know, actually be in a film?
Well, I would say that there was a mutual experience that we were both intrigued possibly with each other, because we had never been with mimes and gotten into the working mine, and I don't think they'd ever experienced having a film crew and actors suddenly flood their town and their mine shafts.